It's a brave new world. I got a new life to live. Another day on earth. Always something more to give. Got a song to sing. Another story told. Give me sanctuary. Life can be so cold. If you need to talk, I'll be there for you. If you need to talk, I'll walk your way. If you need to talk, I'll hold your hand. If you need to talk, just come my way. Just come my way, Joe. All right. Here's the band. All right. Oh, yeah.
I screwed up the ending, sorry. Hey folks, welcome to episode number 16. And today I have my actual first rock star in the house here in our quaint little town of Norfolk, Massachusetts, Mr. Hirsh Gardner. So let me get a little bit of Hirsch's background and his bio here. Hirsh Gardner is widely known, with good reason, as the thunderous drummer of the melodic rocking AOR band New England, who released 3 dynamic albums from 78 to 83. And I'll interrupt right there. Man, I did watch some of your videos, and and I love when drummers hit.
Oh, yeah.
When drummers hit the thing. Boom. That's what rock and roll is about, but I love that, and I love your feel, man.
Thank you.
Which included the top 40 hit Don't Ever Want to Lose You, which was really a great tune, which I learned this morning. It's just a great little riff in A for you guitar players out there, and it's just a little intricate riff, Joe. You know, it's kind of a nice little thing. However, the scope of Gardner's talents go far beyond drumming. He is also a strong vocalist, a strong songwriter, a guitar player, and is also a renowned producer. Actually, interrupting right here, produced a good friend of mine, Sarah Thompson.
She's awesome.
Who's a great blues singer, and Sarah and I started the duo together about 10 years ago. Add solo artist to the list as well, as Gardner released his second effort in August, titled My Brain Needs a Holiday, and I can relate to that. Recorded in his Boston recording studio as well as his home studio. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that, Hirsh, and the new world that we're in right now, where people can do things right in their house. The new CD features 8 original tracks penned by Gardner, as well as 2 carefully chosen cover tracks. The songs create a lot of different vibes, some of them familiar to that of New England, and some that are not. You hear that classic melodic rock style, but also a variety of crunching guitars, catchy hooks, instrumental loops, and a couple of ballads mixed in. And now Hirsh introduces us to the Hirsh Gardner Project. I've carefully chosen some of the best musicians to play with in this band. I mean, Tony Puleo on bass also plays with Blue Man Group, and I love Blue Man, so if he's in that the band with Blue Group, that's pretty amazing. Joe Feloni, who's with us again. If you remember, Joe came from episode 14, and he's a monster. You guys have been together for quite some time. Nat, Sarah Lambert, who's going to be on this show next month, a monster kid. Another kid you find on these videos, and I'm like, holy, who is this guy?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
He's a kid to us. He's in Berkeley right now, and he comes from Bangkok, Thailand. David Sumner, multi-instrumentalist on keys, and last but not least, Stephen Michael Sorum on drums. So is that, I'll talk about that. I mean, it must be, Phil Collins did that for years, where he walked away from the drum set and he became the front guy, which has got to be a different trip. So we'll get into that sort of thing. The hardest job in this band, because he has to put up with me, I bet, and they're all... I get some stories with that, working with guys who were the front guys, who were the drummers, who would then lecture the drummer on grooves. So I get that. I'm honored to be playing, and Hirsh says he's honored to be playing with these folks. So here we go. We hit the jam, and we're intro, and we start off with how I always start this sort of thing. Who is Hirsh? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? How'd you up in this place in Boston? Because I believe you're from Toronto?
Toronto, Canada.
And I heard a little about, can you say about?
A boot.
A boot.
Well, actually, my Canadian accent's gone now for the most part.
Yeah, I don't hear it, but I heard it in some of your videos on YouTube. Tiny bit.
Yeah.
On some, there was some other video where you were being interviewed by somebody. So tell me about that. So Canada, tell me about being a...
Well, I grew up in Canada in the 60s, and like everybody else, was involved with music after I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. But my musical career actually started before the Beatles and before pop and rock music.
Right.
My aunt was a huge swing era fan, and she introduced me to Benny Goodman and Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, and all of those guys. So I had all of those albums on Verve Records. Mm-hmm. So I was playing jazz drums before I started playing rock, and then of course the Beatles and the Stones came along, and that's when I got into rock and roll.
Right.
Was playing in a band called the Blues Faction in Toronto, in Yorkville Village. Yorkville Village in Toronto was just like Greenwich Village, but the Canadian version. And some of my peers at that time were people like Joni Mitchell.
Right, because she's from Canada.
Yeah,
right?
Stephen Stills, Neil Young. I mean, those guys were all in Toronto at that point. So it was an amazing, music scene back then. I mean, I was just a kid, and I was staying out all night long with my parents' blessing, because they knew I was doing music.
Yeah.
Doing jam sessions all night long in the village at places called like the Purple Onion and the Avenue Road Club, and a lot of like really world famous musicians came out of that scene. Mm-hmm. So then...
Can I interrupt you there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So 15, 16 years old? We're talking
Yeah.
60s?
Yeah.
Okay, so before that, how'd you learn? Did you have
good question.
lessons?
No. When I first started playing drums, I mean, I was banging on pots and pans like every other kid.
When you were 4 or 5.
Yeah, when I was like 4 or 5, and my mom's like, stop! But, so that whole thing continued. And let me see. I think maybe a couple of years before, a friend of mine, Sonny Bernardi, who went on to play with a famous Canadian band called Crowbar. Sonny's mom and dad ran the coat check room at a place called... it was a club in Toronto. Okay, and in the Sunday matinees, we were allowed to go there because there was no drinking and stuff. So we would go see these bands, and I was like, "Oh man, this is cool." It was a band called Johnny Green and the Green Men. Now, how can I remember that far back, right? But it had such an impact on me that Sonny
10,
and I,
11 years old.
Yeah, probably maybe 13, 14, 15,
so you're
right
like
in
a
there.
teenager.
I mean, we were hockey players.
Right, of course you were.
Sonny and I, we were on the hockey team, and so we sort of gravitated together towards playing music. And my sister loaned me $250, and I went out and I bought a 1965 or 64 Ludwig bass drum and a snare drum, and that was it.
And no teaching, you're hitting the you listen to the music, you're hitting 2 and 4, and hitting some cymbals along the way. And
Yeah. I mean, I had a little setup in my little basement where my drums were set up, and every day after school I would come home and I would just play music, and I would play. Right. I would play to these
like a record player over in the side, and you had the drums going.
Yeah, cool. And I played to these jazz records. I set up a couple extra speakers so I could hear. An electronic genius at 14. Not really, but so we were. We were involved in this whole music thing at that point. I was listening to all these different jazz records, and then I started listening to the rock and roll records, and then I did take lessons for a little while with a guy named Alex Colello. Man, all this stuff is coming back to me like 500 years later. So after Toronto, I decided, well, where am I going to go to school? And because I really didn't do well in school at all. I was more into playing
Joe
music.
and I talked about this last time. Sometimes musicians, I went to Latin school, but I was hanging on by a thread, and because it was guitar.
Yeah.
And football.
Yeah.
Football, hockey, basketball.
Right, yeah. So eventually I made it. So eventually I made it to Boston, and I went to Berklee College of Music.
Like as 18-year-old?
Yeah.
Or
Well, I think
were
it
you
was.
older?
I think it was 18 or 19, somewhere in there.
Okay, so.
In Canada, you do an extra year in school.
Uh-huh.
So here I am in 1969.
Wow,
Cab.
right down in Berkeley was, I got there at 74. It was a serious jazz school. In 69, it was 100% jazz,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did not
So I
do-
was.
no backbeats.
I was
no
the
rock and
I was the
roll.
oddball.
Yeah.
I was definitely the oddball, and so I spent 4 years at Berklee, and I did not graduate because I was more interested in playing. So the whole time that I was there, I was putting bands together, going out and playing, and doing my gigs. And
Yeah, Joe said the same thing. Did a few semesters, and then and again, part of Berkeley are the folks you meet.
Yeah.
And so the education was going out to those clubs and being around Boston. So that's an interesting time. 69. Who'd you have for teacher? Was there anybody influential?
Alan Dawson.
Oh my God. Alan Dawson was the man.
Yeah.
And if you were taken with Alan Dawson, you know, everybody who was anybody took from Alan Dawson.
And Gene Roma was my teacher. Fred Buddha. Who's
his son?
Whose son
amazing.
Dave is absolutely. Dave's a dear friend of mine. He's
I played
amazing.
with Dave when he was 15.
Yeah.
It was a club, a gig, high-end sort of jazz stuff, and I'm there, who is this child? I was like 30, 35.
Yeah, right.
And monster kid.
He's great.
I mean, he's grown up now.
Yeah.
I have lost guy. I only played with him that one time, but Fred, for those of you who don't know, was the head percussionist for many, many years.
Boston
For
Symphony,
the Boston
right?
Symphony Orchestra and the Boston Pops. Taught at University of Lowell. Unbelievably influential guy in the Boston scene. Was the guy who booked a lot of the musicians for the musical theater in Colonial at the Wang and all that.
Yes, he did. So just being involved and being around and being in that environment of learning new things and looking at the level of proficiency that those people were at, you kind of rise up that ladder and follow in their footsteps. And I hope I did at that time. I learned a lot from those people.
How was that? Did you feel any intimidation? Because, with reading, I'm assuming you didn't have a ton of reading.
Right.
So you're in with all these heavy-duty jazz, and I felt that when I was there.
Yeah.
As I always joke to Joe, it's like I went to Berkeley with long hair and a Les Paul and a Marshall and left with a 335 and a jazz amp and shorter hair. And immediately went on the road and had to relearn how to play rock.
Well, I went to Berkeley and I had short hair, and as time went on, it started growing, and I figured,
But did you feel
any
of that intimidation?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was part of the reason that I didn't do well with my schooling is because I was so intimidated by these people. It's like, I can never do that.
Right.
I'm kind of going in a different direction. And it was accepted by my friends, my fellow musicians, but as far as, the teachers and things like that, I mean, they really didn't have a whole lot to do with what I did on the outside. But I put a lot of my efforts on what I was doing outside of school. And I kick myself now, like so many years later, because
I'm sure you felt it because it's harder for a drummer. Because a drummer, can you play your drums in C sharp? No. Can you play a D? It's like they are, 2 and 4, and there's some heavy duty stuff, but they don't have that harmonic sort of thing.
Yeah.
So harmony's an issue.
Oh, I just didn't get that at all.
Counterpoint and progressions and all that sort of stuff. I would imagine it was much harder for a drummer.
But years later, I'm in the studio with some band, and you may have actually witnessed this because Joe and I have done many, many recording sessions together. And this was a keyboard player, and he was playing this lick, and I said, "Dude, there's a wrong note in there. We need to figure out what's going on." And he says, "No, it's right." Keyboard players, they kind of know everything, right?
Right. They always do.
So I said, well, no, we really need to take a listen. So what key are you in and what chord you playing? And so, okay, you're playing a sharp 4, and don't do that's a Lydian scale.
Right.
So, and it's like, all of a sudden I looked at myself and said, wait a minute,
how did I
know that? I'm a drummer, how do I know that? So, a lot of the things that I learned in Berkeley in the 4 years, in spite of not finishing my degree, which made my mom really sad. In spite of not finishing the degree, years later, I only realized that, man, you really learned a lot of stuff, because as a record producer and a songwriter, you need those tools. So I got them somewhere, And it must have been that I was kind of like listening to what they were
I'm going
saying.
to interrupt you right there because I'm in dialogue every now and then with Roger Brown, who's the president of Berkeley, and I want to know what it's going to take to get that degree for you. And I guarantee you, you've put in the sweat and the sweat equity
Yeah.
of our industry.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the whole story here, so it's a great story. It's like, Roger, this guy deserves the undergraduate. Can you just write it
Yeah.
and send it in the mail? So,
Well, I did go back and I spoke to Ken Brass. And Roger's a good friend of mine as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Cool.
we see each other a lot. And so Ken Brass, who's one of the head of the ensemble division, at least he was a couple of years ago when I was checking out what I needed to finish my degree.
Yeah, yeah.
So he gives me this list of stuff that I needed to do, and I was like, man, I could probably do that. But my big problem is, when am I going to have time to study?
Right.
Because my life is full.
I know, I can tell, man.
There's no time, and you have to weigh out the fact is, okay, am I going to go and spend the time to get that, and for what purpose?
Right. It's just, you should get an
I'm
honorary
good.
degree. Jimmy Page got an honorary degree, and I
Yeah.
guarantee you, Jimmy doesn't read music. Nothing against Jimmy. Probably my number one influence as a kid. So you get 4 years. So what are we talking about here? We're talking early 70s. 73, 74.
Yeah.
You're out.
So I'm out playing in the band in Berkeley, and I'm finishing school in '73.
Yeah.
I knew everybody in the local scene at that point, and there was a band called Fatback back in the day, not the R&B band, but it was I know there was an R&B band, but Jimmy Waldo, my keyboard player in New England, was the keyboard player in
He's a great keyboard
Fatback.
player, man. I love his pieces.
He's amazing.
Especially in that tune, the tune we're going to end with today.
Yeah.
It's just a nice sort of feel to it.
Yeah. Jimmy was one of the first people in the country to have Mellotrons. He had all of the, all the Moog synthesizers, Rhodes Chroma.
He was on the cutting edge of that stuff.
Oh yeah, he was.
Back in those days, you
and
need
he still
cables,
is.
like Keith Emerson. You need like punch cables and
I mean, now
there was no button you push for the sound. You had to create the sound.
Yeah. So now, when New England plays now, Jimmy brings 2 controller keyboards and his computer and Main Stage, which is an application which has all his sounds that he's saved over the years. He's got real Mellotrons that play, Hammond B3s. So I met Jimmy, and I was in a band called Berkshire or Crossfire. We changed our name to get gigs because they didn't want to hire us again, so we changed the name. Is that right?
Yeah, that happens.
So I joined. So Jimmy asked me to join Fatback.
Okay.
And Fatback was kind of a really prog type of band back then.
Can you tell the people what that means?
Well, prog is kind of. You've got your regular pop music where you're doing 1/4/5 changes and bubblegummy type of thing. And prog is when you're out there doing, 5/4 time signatures and you're doing things where you got chord changes going on.
Complex.
And it's
I
very
think of
complex.
The band, yes. It's my first sort of...
and King Crimson.
In King Crimson, too. I never got into Fragile, that album, Fragile. I listened to the guitar... What's the guitar player's name, Joe? I forget his name.
Steve Howe.
Steve Howe. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
They had to retire him from guitar player from winning the greatest guitar player in the world, like 10 years in a row. I said, okay, we need some. And then Steve Morse won it for the next 10 years. So go on, man.
So Jimmy and I are in Fatback. Now, we had Jimmy on keys, me on drums, a bass player, and a lead singer. No guitar. And you can see that is serious prog.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants a guitar player.
Yeah,
so we played for a couple of years. We wrote songs. We recorded. I mean, I had my little 4-track recording studio even back then. And, so we'd record all of our stuff. And then eventually that band, was breaking up or wasn't really going anywhere.
Let me interrupt you with that band. Where were you playing? Were you playing like Bunratty's?
We're playing Katie's, Katie's.
Right in Kenmore Square, absolutely.
With Aerosmith on the Sunday afternoon matinee.
Wow. So you were really into passing those sorts of...
Well, yeah, we'll talk, the Boston community of musicians is fairly small.
Right.
And most of the cats we all know each other. It's like the guys from the Cars and Aerosmith and, all the bands that Charlie Farron, and we all kind of like grew up in the same scene together.
Yeah.
Guys in Boston. I mean, we're all, friendly with each other, and even, today, but we all bumped into each other way back then.
That's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the Boston. We will get into that because... It's just not that way, in my humble opinion, these days. The kids from Berkeley, they immediately moved to New York City, Nashville, or LA now.
Yeah, they do.
Back in the 80s, especially after the Cars and all the bands we were just talking about got signed, Boston was as hot as it got, being led by WBCN, the radio station there. 10 years later, I think it was Seattle with the grunge sort of scene.
It was.
But Boston had its heyday, and you were right there.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of it. So go on through that, man. So
Okay.
you're playing Katie's. Where else was that band playing?
So we played just about every nightclub
Over in Cambridge, you're playing Jack's and those places.
Jack's and J.A.'s, the Beachcomber down in Quincy. What was that place down in Hull? Uncle Sam's.
Uncle Sam's. And let me, you may not be able to see this at home. The T-shirt he's wearing was the venerable place in the city of Boston.
The Channel,
and the
which
Channel wasn't around in the mid-70s.
No.
That came around, what, 81, 82,
I think so,
something
yeah.
like that.
Right.
In that ballpark, Joe?
79, I think.
Oh, 79.
Was it? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, because New England actually played at the Channel a couple times.
Yeah, the Channel was great.
It's a great concert
Kind
club.
of a tough place. I was playing the Tuesday nights where 17 bands would go on. And they were kind of like, and I don't know if you knew these guys, Joe, and hopefully I won't run into any issues here, but you were given 5 minutes to get your equipment off the stage by very, very tough big guys. And they said, if you don't get stuff off in 5 minutes, we'll
throw it off.
We're going to throw it off. And I had like beautiful hands. So that's what the T-shirt is, man.
Oh,
and we
man,
can
yeah.
talk about that for hours.
So
So that being kind of faded.
Yeah. So, and at that point, what we did is we wanted to get a guitar player in the band. So John Fannin auditioned for the band. He was in a band called Flash Pudding, which also was playing the local scene. So John joined our band, and now I got to get the story straight here because the timeline's kind of weird. So from 73 to 76, we played as Target was the name of the band. So we changed the name of the band.
73 to 76.
Yeah, to Target.
Okay.
And then we played everywhere. We did all the clubs in Boston, New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont. We toured out in the Midwest in the middle of the winter. I mean, this is a real typical story. So we would pack up our bigger truck. It was a 22-foot ice cream truck, right?
No
so
way.
we'd
Mr.
throw all of our
Frosty?
gear in the ice cream truck, and then we also had a Ford Econoline van, which we lined the floors
Right.
with mattresses.
Right.
So
I
three
did
guys,
that, man, yeah.
3 guys in the big truck, and the other 4 guys in the van, and we're driving out to the Midwest.
Very
and-
safe, right? All safety belts and
Oh yeah, right.
airbags, everything, right?
In the middle of the winter, dead of winter, in the
Right.
middle of Michigan.
Imagine the heat in that Ford. None.
Well, yeah. Well, check this out. So we all took turns driving. We're at a toll booth, and so I jammed the big truck, the gear shift into first gear, and as I'm going into second gear, the gear shift comes out of the floor.
Jesus.
So I'm holding the gear shift, and we're in second gear.
If this is Stooges, I go,
So this is how we toured back in the day
Throw
when
the
there was no
clutch.
money. We just
Throw the clutch.
So here we are, and there's ice on the floor of the truck because we didn't have any heat.
See, rock and roll is very glamorous.
Yeah.
It's a glamorous lifestyle.
Yeah. It got better, which was what we always aspired for, too.
Right.
So,
And let me interrupt you right there.
Yeah.
Were you, like, renting? Were you able to support yourself? I mean, because the money in that world.
barely.
Right. And we're saying,
Well, we all lived in the same house, so we split rent,
really?
which might have been like $125 a month, and
so
we could come up
between,
with
like,
that.
5-6 guys.
Right,
Yeah.
and we, drove taxis and did whatever we could do.
So you
to,
figured out how to make a little bit of income
yeah.
outside of music.
No money.
To continue on.
Very poor.
Which I think you have to do in that business. It's not like being a finance guy and you graduate and you start at Fidelity at today you start off at 80 grand,
Yeah, right.
Musicians, it's a tougher lifestyle because if you're going to do it and push it for real, you have to put everything on line.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to eat ramen for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, it develops work ethic, and I know that people who work with me know that I have a very strong work ethic, and it's like I get up in the morning and I work right through till 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I get up at 5:30 and I begin my day, and that's the work
I feel
ethic.
bad he texted me this morning because I had a gig last night and I got in late. And
I did text
so
you at
I
6.
did sleep, and I'm this shoot. This guy did text me at 6, and I'm getting up at 8. I felt bad. So there you are. And that's original music.
Yeah. Well, we I think
73, 76.
Yes,
Sometimes.
most of it was original. We did a couple of cover things just to keep things even
You
when
weren't
we played
working
in
for
the
Ted
club.
Charles, were you? Did you have an agent?
I knew of him. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He was famous for,
Yeah.
let's send you to Peoria for $5.
Yeah. So in about 75 or 76, the band disbanded. You know, we weren't really going anywhere. And so I actually joined a couple of other bands and was starting my producing career back then. So I was able to at least make a living. And then John Fannin and I remained friends.
Right.
And in about 77, John says, "Hey, listen, let's record a couple songs." So I was okay, great. So we got a deal at Intermedia Studios, which is on Newbury Street in Boston.
That was a
which,
big one, right? It was. I knew there was some big one down there in Newbury
yeah,
Street.
and then the Cars actually eventually bought Intermedia.
That's exactly right.
So we go in and we recorded 2 songs, and we needed keyboards and bass, so we invited Gary Shea, our current New England bass player, and Jimmy Waldo to join us and finish up the tracks. So all of a sudden we go, wow, this is clicking. The song's great. You know, we played together, we practiced. I had a great little spread down in Braintree, Mass, and I was renting. It sounds glamorous, but I was renting it from this gentleman. So I had like a 10-room house. There was a tennis court and swimming pool, and another house on the property that I tore all the walls out and turned it into a studio.
Wow.
So it was like a rehearsal studio. So Jimmy, Gary, and John and I got together and we started playing in 77, which was the beginning of New England. We had a couple of different names, but we all settled on New England. From 77 to through 77, 78, and part of 79, a friend of ours owned a recording studio in Philadelphia. And he would invite us down to record songs. So we had all these demo songs of, future New England songs. And a friend of ours knew Rick Aliberti, who was the second in command at Bill Aucoin Management. Bill Aucoin managed
a famous
Kiss.
guy.
He managed.
Talk about him a little bit.
Well, Bill was a dream come true for all of us. So I'll get it.
Guy too. Yeah.
Bill grew up in this area and eventually moved to New York. So we started to, we started recording songs down there, and Rick Alberti comes to see the band when Kiss was playing in Providence, because Kiss and Bill and Rick Alberti, they were all on the same team. Rick comes into the studio, our little 30 by 30 studio in Braintree, and we have, the Marshall stacks and the SVTs and Jimmy's huge keyboard thing, and my full set of drums, and we just played our concert set. So we played for Rick for like 40 minutes, and he was like, "Are you kidding me? You guys are unbelievable."
And you had the vocals too. If you
Oh
listen.
yeah,
I mean the vocals
3 lead
are
singers
there.
in the band.
3 harmonies, beautiful harmonies.
So Rick leaves and asks us. He said, "Would you mind if I bring Bill up to see you guys?" And we're like, "No, we don't want to see Bill Aucoin." Of course, we said yes.
He was the manager for Kiss. Kiss
Bill,
at that time was one of the biggest acts in the world.
They were, and today they still are. So, so Bill Aucoin flies into Boston, gets in his limo, and drives up to our little studio in Braintree. And, we're looking out the windows. This black limousine pulls up. I was like, wow.
This is back in the days when people paid for music.
Yeah.
And it was real money.
Yeah. So Bill comes in, and so we did the same thing. We played our set. And he was just like, "You guys are amazing." And Bill, I remember this distinctly. He said, "You guys are absolutely one of the best live bands that I have ever seen." He said, "You guys are incredible." And he invited us down to New York City, flew us all down. Limousine picks up the airport. Long story short, we signed a management contract with Bill Aucoin. So Bill's now our manager. Now the next step is to get a record deal. And back in '79, a record deal, that was the thing. If you had a record deal,
wanted it.
you haven't made it yet, but you're well on your way. So for the next couple of months, the little studio in Braintree, we played for Al Corey from RSO Records, Chris Wright, the Chris in Chrysalis Records, Clive Davis.
Clive Davis doesn't get any bigger,
and,
right?
and that's a
Doesn't get any
name.
bigger.
That's a name that everybody can relate to, because Clive he's God in the music industry, and all of them wanted us to sign with their label. And Ronald Luxembourg came up and saw us, and Ron was a former head of CBS Records and was starting his own label, Infinity Records, which was a subsidiary of MCA. So we were dealing with the majors at that point, which was an honor. It was great.
And that's a different thing. Go on to the. Could you tell the folks at home difference between a major and the indie records? Is it major league like Red Sox and Pawtucket?
Back then, there wasn't anything called indie. There wasn't an indie label back then.
Right.
You know, you were either Arista Records, CBS Records, Epic Records, RSO Records, Infinity, MCA, Columbia. That's what there was. So, this was great. This is. So we decided to go with Infinity Records, the new kid on the block. And when Clive Davis found out that we were going with Infinity, he invited us to come to New York for lunch. So he flew us all down to New York, and we sat with Clive. And he said, "Guys, I want your band. I want you to sign with me." He said, "You know, you can make your decision, however you feel, you know, is the right way to go for you guys. But I need a band like you on my label. I would love to have you on Arista Records." We chose Infinity Records with the urging of our management, because it was a new label with tons and tons of money.
Did they have Kiss too?
No, that was RSO Records back then.
It's interesting that your manager didn't want to stay in that same group that Kiss was in.
Interesting. I don't know what the decision was. You know, at least with RSO.
Yeah.
But we chose Infinity Records. We signed with Infinity Records, and we were off recording our first album. So the first album was made up of many of the demos that we had previously done in Philadelphia.
Right.
Because, of course, Bill and Rick Alberti were listening to all that material. And, that would be a great song, and that would be a great song. So let's do that one. So we decided that's what we're going to do. So let's get a record producer now. Okay.
Right. This is a good story because I know it. Go on.
So, it's the who's who of record producers back then. I mean, Roy Thomas Baker, Mike Stone. There was just Bob Rock was back then. And who's the guy that produced Pyromania? Def Leppard's producer.
Mutt Lange.
Mutt Lange.
Wow, that's a famous.
These people were all mentioned, and Brian May from Queen, because we were huge Queen fans. So Brian May could not do the production, although he was interested after he heard our material, which would have been a thrill with Brian May.
Trip. Yeah. He seems like a nice guy too.
Been a thrill with any of those guys. So Mike Stone was available at that point. Mike Stone had just finished Bohemian Rhapsody and all of the other Queen albums.
Nice song, right?
And yeah, Mike also worked with the Beatles. I've actually seen some of the Beatles tapes with Mike's name written on it. As I think he wasn't a producer, but he was like a tape op or something. But he was in the room.
Right.
So anyway, so we decided on Mike Stone as a producer engineer, because we knew that he'd get the sounds that we wanted. So then Bill was like, well, let's think about somebody who's musical as well. So we started tossing around some names, and he said, and this came right from Bill O'Coin. I remember the meeting, we were in his conference room on Madison Avenue in New York, and we're throwing around some ideas. Now, he's managing Kiss, right? And Kiss is actually off the road. So he said, what would you guys think if I hooked you up with Paul Stanley? And we're like, whoa. I mean, he's one of the greatest rock singers on earth. Whether you like Kiss or not, he's an amazing performer. You know, and he'd been doing it now for like a long time.
Yeah.
So we had Paul come up to our little studio.
And at that time, as big a name as anybody.
Right. Yeah. So we had Paul come up to our little studio in Braintree, and the limousines pulling up again, and here's Paul Stanley.
You take the makeup off. He's a regular guy. Right?
Oh yeah.
Totally
well, they were all makeup back then, and Paul was kind of like walking around like this whenever we were out in public, but it was funny. So we rehearsed in Braintree. And we started formulating some of the songs. Don't Ever Want to Lose You, I remember, we had several arrangements of that song, which became our first hit single. And Paul's like, where's the guitar solo?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a solo.
Guitar player. I was wondering the same thing.
We don't have a guitar solo in that.
I mean, that would be a perfect, right in that middle with the keyboard player.
Yeah. Well, there is a solo.
It would be a great Brian May type thing.
Yeah, there is a solo in the song that you're listening to now. But that's because Paul, in the arrangement that we had sent him and the arrangements that we were working, it didn't have the solo in it at that point. So Paul's like, guys, you got to have a guitar solo in this song. so that's how the guitar solo actually came to be. And it comes in after the the main bridge part, right? And John does 2 rounds of the chord progression, and then solos all throughout the end of the song, which is absolutely gorgeous with all the background harmonies. So that's Paul Stanley. I mean, he was extremely musical. I remember, so we started recording the album, and they flew us out to LA, and we started recording at, I don't know, the power station or the record plant, one of those cool places.
In LA?
Yeah. And I remember I was in the vocal booth doing background vocals to Don't Ever Want to Lose You. And so the verse is like, you're driving home in, where am I?
Hey, yeah.
You're driving home in a downpour. So on the downpour, Paul wants me to sing downpour. He wants me to do a third above the melody. So I'm singing downpour, and Paul's going, Hirsh, you're a little flat. Can you try that again, man? Downpour. Rhythmically, I think you need to sync up with John a little bit better. John was singing lead vocals on that. And so after like 5 or 6 tries, I'm like, Paul, I'm not getting it, man. Could you come out and sing the part with John? Could you give me an idea of like what you want me to do?
Sure.
I said, I want to get it right, man. So Paul comes out and sings it. First take, blows it out. It was great. So we said, well, let's just keep that, and maybe we'll use that. So he's not credited for it, but Paul Stanley actually sang that part. I think he quadruple tracked it so that it sounds nice and fat.
Right.
But so that's kind of what it was like working with a guy like Paul. He was just very in tune with what you needed to do to make a rock record, and he did, and it was great. So we recorded that album in Los Angeles. We also worked at Electric Lady in New York. We worked at that studio. We also did.
Doesn't get bigger than that, man. Hendrix is home.
No. What's the one on 57th in New York? That might be the Power Station as well.
That's what I was thinking. Power Station was New York City.
Yeah,
right?
they had them in.
They had two? Both?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then we did that, and the album was mixed in England at Mike's studio in England. So
a little side story. Berkeley has bought that entire building.
I know.
And now that's a whole sort of new thing that Berkeley's down and doing in New York City.
I was down there for the intro party.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, it's very, very cool. That's just all the wood in the studio. It's gorgeous.
So tell me about like all the stuff that was happening. I mean, you're really, you're rounding third base, coming home into superstardom. So what was it like hanging out in LA? And
man,
I mean, you must got the star treatment, right?
At times I felt like the Forrest Gump of rock and roll, because I was getting to, I was getting all these incredible historical events and musical events were going on, and we were thrust right into the middle of it.
It's such a cool time. 79, we're talking.
Yeah. So
I mean, that was huge.
One little side story is,
I mean, the disco kind of ruined it, but let's not talk about that.
Yeah, right. One little side story was that we were at Trax up in the Upper East Side or something like that, and I was having some drinks with a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, come on, let's go visit. I'm working in this recording studio. I'm a tape op down there." And I said, "Okay, cool." So I go with him, and I forget what studio it was, but John Lennon was recording Imagine in that studio at that time. And so I didn't know that. So we walked up the stairs, and he says, "Yeah, let's go up to Studio A." So I walk in, and I see this. Wow, man, who's recording this? Like, Dave Weckl on drums, I think. But it's an amazing drum set and a gorgeous like turquoise Fender Rhodes piano, and all this like cool gear, and all the Rickenbacker guitars. And I said, "So who's recording here?" He said, "Oh, this is John Lennon's studio." Huh? So, and shortly thereafter, we know what happened.
And that's when he was doing his comeback.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did a couple albums that I loved at that time. And it's just, I'm still upset about that. But so tell me, did you go on the road? I mean, tell me about what it's like to have a big hit record. I mean, that tune was big. Tell me how big it got. Where it got in the charts?
It was top 40. And we were on Casey Kasem's.
No, did you meet him?
No, it was actually recorded. And
Casey. Yeah.
So Casey Kasem. I'm driving down Boylston Street in my brand new Camaro.
Aha! See, this is back when people bought music.
Yes.
Paid for music.
Right. And so I hear "Don't Ever Want to Lose You" come on the radio. So now the record's released. Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Two channels. So I'm driving down. in Boylston Street, and all of a sudden I hear "Don't Ever Want to Lose You" on the radio, and it was WBCN, of course, because we were friends with all those guys, Parento and Jerry Goodwin and Charles. So this is so cool. I'm driving my new car and I'm hearing my song on the radio. I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I said, let's go see what's on WCOZ, right? That was the other.
I remember COZ.
That was the other. Right. So I hit the button, and "Don't Ever Want to Lose You" was playing on that station as well. Trip. So I'm like, oh my God, this is just amazing. So, and that kind of thing just kept on happening. One of the things about the guys in New England, I mean, everybody in that band has their feet on the ground. There was no huge ego, like I'm a rock star. We were taking that all in as like, oh my God, this is really happening.
That ruined bands.
This is cool.
Ego and a lot of substance abuse issues.
Yeah. So
kills bands.
The tour starts. Bill O'Coin.
Backing? Were you backing like Kiss?
Both.
Okay.
Our very first gig was at the Paradise Theater in Boston. And it was a big deal. I mean, everybody in the world was there.
Paradise still is to this day a big deal to headline.
Yeah. And so that was our first gig.
I mean, you two did it when they were just on their rise.
And that was because of Carter Allen.
And they would hang out at the Rat afterward.
Yeah. So we do the Paradise, which is amazing.
You were opening?
No, we headlined that show.
Okay, you headlined.
And everybody in radio was there. Everybody from New York City came up, and all the big leagues were there.
Boston at that time was maybe the lead city in the world for music. We're talking 80 or 79?
79.
Yeah. So it's right when the Cars were breaking.
Yep.
Boston was breaking.
Yep.
Jake Giles was already big. Aerosmith was already big. But a lot of other bands, names I forget. It was a mecca. Boston was a mecca.
So
that
people were willing to come up.
So everybody who was anybody was there.
Yeah. They good friends. Lenny Peachy from Epic Records, who's a dear friend of mine even today. He was there. Let's go see this band New England that we didn't sign. So we played that gig, and then shortly thereafter we hopped on a plane and we flew to Denver, where we headlined the Rainbow Theater in Denver, and shortly after that we went to Seattle. Actually the next day, and then we started a West Coast tour where we were headlining. It's funny, in Seattle we were at this hotel which is right beside the venue, and there was a rooftop bar, so we were up just hanging out at the bar before the show, and I walked over to the edge and I looked around just to take a gander, and there was a line all the way around the theater for people who were lined up to come and see the band, because the band was huge. Don't Ever Want to Lose You was all over the radio,
all over the world.
And I was like, wow, that's cool. So we played there. Then that's where we caught up with our tour bus, and we toured all down the West Coast. We played Santa Monica Civic Center, played in San Diego. Then the fireworks started to happen. Then the song was huge, and all the major acts wanted us on their bills. So we toured with Journey in Texas, AC/DC in Texas. Then we got on the Kiss tour and Dynasty tour in 79. So we did 40 dates with Kiss. We ended up playing some huge state fairs with Styx, Kansas, Cheap Trick. We played Pontiac Stadium, which is 80,000 people, with Kiss and Cheap Trick.
What's that like when you walk out on stage?
Mind-blowing, humbling.
I bet.
And it's like, wow, we did it. It's funny. When we were still rehearsing in Braintree
back... You weren't kids then? You were late 20s?
Oh, mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Yeah. So you were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah?
We were rehearsing in Braintree to put the band together, and we didn't want... The club tours that I talked about before that we did, all of them, the Midwest, guys, we're not playing clubs anymore. The next gig that we do is going to be Madison Square Garden, figuratively. We knew that that's where we were going to go.
Aim high. That was it.
The night we played Madison Square Garden, opening for Kiss, we opened for 2 nights with Kiss at Madison Square Garden. So I got on the phone. I called my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, guess where I am?" He knew I was on the road and stuff. He said, "Where are you?" He said, "Well, I'm playing Madison Square Garden tonight." And he was like, "Oh man, that's really cool. That's really cool." So
that's great, man.
So that was like, okay, we're doing it, and then so that album we toured for a long time.
And you made some money.
And we were making some money. We're doing, we're paying all the salaries. We're paying for the bus.
And you're paying off the record company for the events.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I think we're still paying off the record company.
That's a longer story in another chapter.
I think they said at one time that we owed them like over $575,000 or something like that.
Right.
Recently, because we now own the rights to our music and we've re-released all the New England stuff. And but that is another story. But that's funny when they said, "Well, you guys still owe us $575,000." It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll talk to you later.
Oh my God.
So we did 2 more albums.
Right.
And the second and third album, the second album was produced by John and Mike Stone, and we recorded
You're
that
still major league producers.
at Intermedia Studios in Boston, because we started to realize at that point we don't need to go to L.A., New York, London to record an album. We've got a studio right here in
10x
Boston.
the costs.
Well, yeah,
The hotel and all that.
yeah.
And you're not really thinking about that in your first album.
Well,
we're rock stars now. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does.
Well, we were kind of put in that predicament. We didn't really have a choice. It's like, this is what you do. So we just go, okay.
Right, the record company and management tell you.
Then we realized, okay, well, we don't want to do that. We want to record at home. We want to stay here, and we'll be more productive. We put second album together. We went out and we toured behind that again, all over the country, and was great. And then the second album was slowing down quicker than we had expected it to. And so they said, well, let's get you back in the studio and record another album.
Right.
So the third album was recorded with Todd Rundgren.
Who? Todd Rundgren.
And
the rock god.
who I just bumped into the other night at Berkeley Performance Center.
Oh, actually, I saw a bunch of people with pictures on Facebook. So he was around.
So Todd and I, whenever he's local, I'm not going to say he's a friend, but he's very friendly when we see each other.
He produced an album, so that means you spent hours.
Yeah.
Along with him, working very hard.
Yeah, and to see Todd Rundgren work was, for me, a real education as a record producer, because now I'm watching the master who produced Bad Outta Hell, that album, Jim Steinman's album, and produced Hall & Oates. He's produced just about everybody else in the world. So working with Todd was just mind-blowing and a really cool education for me as a musician and upcoming producer.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes left here, and I want
right.
to really bring it up to a couple of things. Before I get into your video we're going to show here in a second, not to be a downer or a bummer, but why did New England not become the Cars?
That's a good question, and many, it's just
Because that tune there, who wrote that tune, by the way?
John. Yeah.
Okay, because that is as good as it gets in a
It
rock
is.
song. And it's not your typical sort of progression. It's really cool, and everything about it was... I guarantee you could have done more of that. Why did it... I mean, because that happens in
and
this
it's not
world. New England got to a level, everyone knows who grew up in that era, but Boston, the Cars, Jay Giles, Aerosmith, they're royalty.
Right.
Sometimes it's luck. And
We don't have enough time to talk about the record company and their input and what they failed to do. Also, management and the music scene at that time was changing.
Right. Disco became a factor.
It was punk rock. And then disco. Disco, yes, it
very
was.
Produced, very nice, very high-end musicianship, and punk was everything that was the opposite of that.
Yeah, we were the antithesis.
Great. I mean, and I just can't stand this stuff. But so that it happened.
That ended the band.
Yeah.
That basically, was kind of like a couple of nails in the
Was that
coffin.
crushing? Was that crushing?
Not so much, because then we get on to another set of stories where Jimmy and Gary and I actually reformed together with Vinnie Vincent, who was the guitar player in Kiss.
Right.
And we moved to L.A. and we did that whole thing. And then Vinnie was right in the middle of us getting signed to a record deal. Vinnie was asked to join Kiss. When, of course, we said, oh, dude, go.
Go. Right.
So he went to do Kiss. I came back to Boston, continued on with my recording career and producing, which I did extremely well, and met the lovely, handsome Joe Feloni.
Who is as good as it gets.
We did a lot of work together. And today I just continue doing what I do. But the great thing about the New England story is that we remain friends over the years.
Right.
And in 2006,
That's
we
amazing.
did it after
Normally, money gets involved in who has rights,
Yeah.
and then somebody. That's what happened to the Beatles. Somebody
Right.
sues somebody else, and that's end of friendship.
Yeah. So over the years, since 2006, we've been getting together once a year because we all live in different parts of the country now.
Oh,
We
really?
all have our
Okay.
own lives going on, and we're all busy doing our thing. And I guess this, comes up to current events.
Yeah. Right, let's bring
New
it to
England,
today.
New England is playing on the 25th of October. 25th of October at the Spire Center in Plymouth,
And
Massachusetts.
that's a cool place in Plymouth.
Oh, it's great.
There are a bunch of these places. T-Can's one of them. Regal Theater, the theater over in Lexington, Cary, Cabot up in Beverly. You're seeing big time acts where you don't have to pay $800 for
Yeah.
a ticket. So
Yeah.
that's great. So that's going to be the band New England, right?
Yeah, so New
Or
England-
It's not going to be the Hirsh Gardner
No,
project.
this is New
And
England.
So can you introduce this video we have about you were in Japan 2 years ago?
Yes.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about that video that we're going to play right now?
Well, along with our yearly sojourn together, we play 3 or 4 gigs. We usually do 2 or 3 gigs in the New England area, and then we play a gig in Los Angeles called Grand Oak Live, and we're going to be there on November 2nd this year. So we're doing the 2 New England dates, the 25th at the Spire Center and the 26th at the Bull Run Music Theater. And then we're off to California to do Grand Oak Live, which is an amazing venue. Anybody who's in LA wants to see New England, get a ticket. Grand Oak Live, you can find it online. A couple of years ago, what we did is we also decided, because we had an offer that we couldn't refuse,
Right, go to Japan.
to go to
absolutely.
Japan. Now, the Japan gig was absolutely amazing. When we got off the plane at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, there were fans waiting
No
for
way.
us at the
Cool.
airport. The Japanese dearly love their music.
And they love American.
And they love American music. So we were just like blown away by that. The place that we played was called Club Cheetah. And the video that you're about to see is New England Live at Club Cheetah. Take it away. Rock and roll.
Cool. So we're back again here. So take me up to date with the Hirsh Gardner project and why my good buddy Joe here is with you and what's going on with that.
Joe actually holds me up on stage, keeps me pointed in the
Joe's
right
a young
direction.
kid amongst us.
Yeah, right. So thank you, Joe. Years and years ago, I was producing all these bands, and and in between takes of bands, I'd record songs of my own.
Right.
So I've been writing for years, and it's like I was going to put together a solo band many, many years ago, and I actually started to process, but I kind of like I didn't have the confidence.
Right.
I was like, "Oh, can I really do this? Can I be a lead singer?" I finally decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a band together. So I put a band together called the Hirsh Gardner Project. I gathered together Joe and some of the best local musicians that I could find that were willing to put up with my crap. And so we put a band together.
Cool.
And we've been
Which
doing
led
gigs.
to this album that just came out this past August, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this album's out across the board, Spotify, Apple. And
Yeah.
You just type in Hirsh Gardner and it'll come up.
Yeah.
Cool. So what are the plans for that band? Are you guys gigging or?
Well, right now we're actually recording material now.
For a second album.
Yeah, in the studio. And hopefully we're going to be able to release that soon and get some more gigs and, keep putting the name out there. That's the whole thing. It's you need to promote the band. People need to realize that, okay, this is that Hirsh Gardner guy. He played with New England. Oh, let's go see him play.
Right.
And then you start gathering fans together. We did actually do an amazing gig a few months ago. We were invited to play the KISS convention in Indianapolis.
Oh, cool.
So we flew out to Indianapolis. We did the KISS convention with Tommy Thayer.
You guys are going to NAMM too, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Bob Kulick was there. So it's we're just getting the name out there, keeping it real, keep playing music.
So so New England's playing the Spar.
Yep.
But the Hirsh Gardner Project's none of those sort of local, places thus far.
Well, yeah, we've played. All the different places we played. Tupelo Music Hall.
Oh, cool.
All the
That's
places
coming
that
up
you
in,
mentioned
New
are
Hampshire, right,
are the
yeah.
places that we would be
Fall.
playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Cool. So I appreciate you coming on board here. And
Yeah,
we're
man,
going
it's been
to,
awesome. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
Thanks,
great.
man.
It's a great show.
So Joe, why don't you take it away and we'll rock it out. And thanks for listening, guys.
Don't ever want to lose ya. Oh yeah. Here we go. You're driving home in a downpour. Wait for you to walk through the door. The rain is beating on my brain. As the look on my face stays the same. Don't ever wanna lose ya. Don't ever wanna lose ya. Don't ever wanna lose ya. And when I hear his baby siren, my heart gets so still, just like dying. Do anything to get you home safe. I get stiller than drowning. Yeah. Don't ever wanna lose ya. Don't ever wanna lose ya. Don't ever wanna lose ya. Come on, Bill. Let's sing it home, boys.